The computer hacker group Anonymous is claiming tonight that it took down the website of the Federal Appeals Court in San Francisco this afternoon.
They took down Senate.gov servers. They've taken down HB Gary. Sony's claiming they did $150 million worth of damage.
So many confidential files that tonight, because of these hackers, can be in the hands of anyone.
Visa, MasterCard, the PayPal situation.
The criminals who hacked into Sarah Palin's private email.
The Church of Scientology says Anonymous is a cyber terrorist group of religious bigots.
Anonymous and this other group called Lulz Sec. They seem to be wanting to prove a point.
Anonymous kind of was like the big, strong, buff kid who had low self-esteem. And then all of a sudden punched somebody in the face and was like, holy shit, I'm really strong. And Anonymous calls itself the final boss of the internet. And sometimes it proves to be really fucking true. You are going to violate the freedoms of the internet, you certainly better watch the fuck out.
They are kind of the rude boys of activism. There's a real rough edge to them, which I think also is one reason why they garner so much love and hate from people too. They represent a certain sort of chaotic freedom.
Individual, young, nameless, faceless folks are having geopolitical impact. I mean, it's both exhilarating to realize that and terrifying to realize that. It kind of depends on how that power is wielded.
We are legion. We do not forget. Expect us.
We stand for freedom. We stand for freedom of speech, the power of the people, the ability for them to protest against the government, to right wrongs. No censorship, especially online, but also in real life.
We have members throughout society and all stratas of it worldwide. Yet we have no leadership.
It's one voice. It's not individual voices. That's why we don't show our faces. That's why we don't give our names. We're speaking as one, and it's a collective. Good timing.
I would love to live in a country where the government fears its citizens and not the other way around. But right now, plenty of anonymous actors are in hiding because of fear of reprisals by the government. I've been called many things. There's unpatriotic.
That we're just a bunch of children sitting in our parents' basement.
I got called a terrorist sympathizer. We've been called kids, we've been called cyberbullies, we've been called hooligans, and you know, sometimes those words aren't entirely unfair, but this is a serious political movement.
No one, in the general public really seems to get it. What they don't seem to get is that the ability for Anonymous to be everything and anything is its power.
Anonymous is a series of relationships, hundreds and hundreds of people who are very active in it and who have varying skill sets and who have varying issues they want to advance and who are collaborating in different ways each day.
They're a little bit like a prism or kaleidoscope. They've got many different facets and many different sides. Of course, when you spend enough time with them, you start to get a sort of feel or texture that's not just random, right? Yet it's very multifaceted, very rich, which does span from the quite lighthearted to the very, very serious.
Bob Dylan had a line in a song just saying, to live outside the law, you must be honest. They might do something which isn't technically correct, maybe it's not legally correct, but they're doing it for purposes that in their minds at least are ethical.
People who know what they're doing, who share an ethos, who have a commitment to exposing and humiliating the man, who have a very low tolerance of lies and what they perceive as evil on the part of overweening power structures. They share information, they share tools and techniques, and they are currently having a very good time.
The hacker culture, as we know it, really sprang from one place. It was MIT, and it was specifically the people in the Model Railroad Club, the Tech Model Railroad Club.
Hacking originated as humorous pranks. When the guys at MIT put a Volkswagen up on top of the dome of the building, and people woke up and saw the car up there in the morning, or they measured a bridge by the body lengths of somebody. I would say his name was Brian, and discovered the bridge over the Charles River was, 822 Brians. These are funny things. That's where hacking originated, and it migrated into engineering and computer communities. It's witty, it's pranks.
I'm Chris Weishopel, former member of the Loft. We don't necessarily say hacking group because it makes it sound like we're hacking, so we used to call it a hackers think tank. Hacktivism was a term coined by a group called Cult of the Dead Cow. The Cult of the Dead Cow was really kind of sort of like a propaganda type of organization. They had a guy who's the minister of propaganda. They're kind of merry pranksters. Like everything they did was completely over the top. One of the guys there coined the term hacktivism because he saw one of the things his group was doing, which he called hacktivism, was writing software that people in other countries could use to communicate securely, even if their government was spying on them. So the principle was really, it was freedom of expression. It was everyone should have access to the internet. Everyone should be able to communicate and get their message out on the internet. Even more important in countries where there was repressive regimes, that if you said something against the regime, they would come and take you away, and you weren't saying it anymore. Just like in traditional activism, it spans the full gamut from sit-ins or pickets to actually spiking trees and pouring sand in the engines of construction vehicles. I mean, there's real sabotage. The same thing does all fall under the hacktivism label. There is a spectrum.
There's sometimes a strong anarchist flavor to it as well. It's resistance to authority and those who would impose groupthink and group behavior on people, which was rightly perceived to be a consequence of the digital revolution as it was used by people in power to do hacking on behalf of righteousness and to redress the grievances of the world. Lance lowered Don Quixote on his horse, nag though she was, flying at the windmills of modern life.
Anonymous grew out of what's known as 4chan. And essentially, this is just a website where people can upload images and you don't actually give your name. It's just sort of anonymous.
When you look at 4chan, you're often surprised because it looks like a site from like 1995 or something. The idea is very simple. You post a comment and you post a picture. And you can post under your name or anonymously. And it's separated into boards about particular topics. So there's topic on anime, there's topic on weaponry.
There's like a 4chan board for origami, and you just upload interesting pictures of origami. And then there was a group called the B board, which essentially was for like anything goes.
The first time anybody goes on B, it's kind of an instant revulsion. Because there's never a time that you go on there where you don't see something horrible. That instantly puts off a lot of people.
The idea is post something that can never be unseen. Half of the posts on B are there specifically to make people not want to come back to B.
It's what you get when people are allowed to express themselves with absolutely no restrictions whatsoever. It's the kind of sum of human imagination when people can get together and think together without any limits or parameters.
It's the most vile, disgusting, and funny thing on the internet.
One of the important things about 4chan is to have a thread that really explodes and lasts for a long time. If it doesn't, then it disappears. It's a site that's not archived. So it creates conditions for anything that grabs attention at some level. And so humor and grotesqueness as a result are quite good for that.
I'd rather just be referred to as anonymous, I guess, in the interviews, because I have some docs out on me. 4chan's just where I went to. I grew up on it and I lived there. That's just what I did for fun. It takes a thick skin to enjoy it. But, you know, as long as you're not offended, you'll occasionally come into something really cool or really creative on 4chan. I think the most interesting thing about it is how you can watch memes evolve. You'll see something posted one day, and then a week later, it's got 50,000 derivatives of it. A meme is basically just an idea. It's kind of like a gene, but in the realm of the idea.
A lot of the great internet memes that we all know and love, you know, lolcats, right? You know, little cats doing funny things, and then they have, you know, Icon has cheeseburger, right? All that stuff seems to start in this like petri dish that is 4chan b-board.
Say it publicly and you're insane. Chocolate rain.
Name any meme from the last about 6 years, and I'll bet you either in its first posting ever was on 4chan, or at least one of its earliest revisions that became what it was on 4chan.
I can see the food situation is so we'll be on our way.
It's basically the best breeding ground for internet culture, and as far as I'm concerned.
With your neighborhood insurance rates, chocolate rain.
4chan is also very known for acts of trolling.
Trolling is a fucking art. Trolling is getting the person you're talking to get as pissed off as they possibly can, and for no reason except for your own enjoyment. Maybe you're trying to illustrate a point, but it's mostly for your own enjoyment.
For them, it's funny that like people think the internet is serious business. And if people think the internet is serious business, it's a troll's job to make their life terrible.
The idea of anonymous came initially as a joke. I mean, somebody suggested that what if the whole site, what if 4chan, what if B was just one person? And what if that's just one guy called Anonymous sitting somewhere and you're just reading all these posts by one guy? And it kind of looked like that from the outsider's perspective. I mean, there's no way to tell the difference. It might as well be one guy.
Fox News did a very famous segment about it.
They call themselves anonymous. They are hackers on steroids, treating the web like a real-life video game, sacking websites, invading MySpace accounts, disrupting innocent people's lives. And if you fight back, watch out.
Destroy, die, attack. Threats from a gang of computer hackers calling themselves Anonymous.
I've had 7 different passwords and they've got them all so far.
Anonymous hacked his site and plastered it with gay sex pictures. His girlfriend left him.
She thought that I was cheating on her with guys.
As long as I can think back, Anonymous have done some pretty off-color things in the name of getting cheap laughs, you know. But, I mean, that's part of the culture.
They get what they call lulz.
Lulz is a corruption of LOL, which stands for laugh out loud. Anonymous gets big lulz from pulling random pranks. For example, messing with online children's games like Habbo Hotel.
Habbo Hotel was this online community where you had an avatar and you walked around and talked to other people. It was kind of like an early version of, you know, World of Warcraft or Second Life or any of those virtual worlds. What the people on B did was invade Habbo Hotel, created, you know, thousands of avatars. They all had this one uniform of a black guy with a big afro wearing a black suit. And so there would be thousands of these people, black guys, black suit, you know, huge afro, walking around this world, and they would do things like form a swastika out of themselves. And I think that was a real landmark because it was when they were able to see that, you know, they can use their numbers to do something really interesting and really disruptive.
So we blocked the entrance to their pool, and that just pissed them off so fucking much. It was fucking beautiful. That was fucking just wonderful. Wonderful times. Those kids love that pool. They love the shit out of their pool.
The goal was actually to offend everyone, simply because the idea that we could offend you by drawing a little shape on the screen was stupid to the people involved in it. They were like, really? You're going to get that mad over us just drawing this on the screen? Wow, well, you need to refocus a little on life because this should not be upsetting you that much.
All these different organizations online, whether it's 4chan or just any website, there's typically a community aspect to it. This is where people have their social relationships. This is where their friends are. This is where they have a creative outlet. And so all those aspects are going into groups like Anonymous, where people feel like they're part of a bigger thing and they're able to express themselves within that group.
There were certain words, certain phrases, certain ways people respond to things, certain images that were posted that created a pattern, and that pattern was, I guess, the origin of what is now Anonymous.
It's like Freemasons with a sense of humor, in so much as they have this common symbology, and one of their chief joys, which is kind of wrapped up in power and secrecy, was the fact that they could recognize each other by referencing these symbols, referencing these phrases. Over 9,000.
It's over 9,000!
I lost my iPod. Mudkips, anything involving mudkips. So you have this weird sort of international culture developing with people, across the world, wherever they may be.
In late 06 and, into early 07, there's a bit of a sea change where instead of just posting a bunch of content or randomly saying we're going to go over to some website and post a bunch of dirty comments against someone, it becomes a little more organized.
Welcome to the Hal Turner Show.
They went after a guy named Hal Turner.
I am being discriminated against because I'm white.
Hal Turner was a neo-Nazi who was, big online and had a podcast.
I think that the 14th Amendment was not ratified properly, and I think, therefore, it is still okay to have Negroes as slaves in America.
The first time I heard about Hal Turner is he was knocking somebody on 4chan. There's a million neo-Nazis out there. But he started picking on our dude, so we had to go to our dude's fucking defense, and it just so happened that he was a neo-Nazi, so that's a bigger reason that he's a fucking dickface.
Who are you? Where are you calling from?
Hola, this is Pedro.
Spick, don't call.
Diego.
He was just a horribly racist radio personality who seemed to handle it well when you called in. Like, he could handle being berated by Anonymous. And that made it very interesting. It made it a bit of a challenge. It wasn't some guy who just either crumbled or stopped answering the phone. It was a guy who would yell back.
Hal Turner wasn't the first, actual person that, Anonymous had caused trouble for, but the circumstances ended up being significant. They DDoS'd his website, stuff like that, costing him thousands of dollars, bandwidth fees.
Denial of service has been around for